Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
The judiciary is in news, especially the higher judiciary and the Supreme Court. And we know that one reason is the alacrity with which it answered Arnab Goswami's prayer and also gave him relief, which was well deserved. The only question is, why is the court doing it sort of selectively? So there are lawyers like Dushyant Dave who say that it depends on your luck which judge or which bench you run into, and should that be fair, particularly when it comes to Supreme Court of India. So those are larger issues. There are also issues about the liberty of other people. Siddique Kappan, the Kerala journalist, who apparently was denied access to his lawyer for almost a month and a half, has now got it. But again, Supreme Court has given notice to UP government, and UP government will now respond in a day or so. So once again, it looks like the same alacrity was missing. So this argument goes on, and at some point I will come back and do a cut the clutter fully on many of these cases, including on many of the cases of people in the Bhima Koregaon case, or generally of what is seen as cases of alleged Naxal sympathizers, because I might have a more nuanced, or depending on which way you are, a more nuanced or more complicated view on that one. But I will come to that a little bit later. But just to tell you in one line, everybody under the Indian system, even a foreign citizen, must get fair treatment under the law, even if evidence on camera is available. And we saw that even Ajmal Kasab got access to the full legal justice system. So that should not be denied to anybody, even if a person is a Naxalite. At the same time, everybody who's been arrested does not become an angel or an innocent poet or an 80-year-old, because many of them have no bad track record, but some of them have really lousy track records, and they have made their careers and fame essentially sending young people and young tribals to their death, fighting this unwinnable war in the Bastar, while they get their own glory sitting wherever they are and write their stirring poetry. So I will not go more into that, except to say that even they, all of them, also deserve justice and full access to justice like anybody else should, any Indian citizen or anybody, even a foreigner charged under Indian law in India. So that also covers what happened with the Vara Vara Rao case. He is sick, he needs medical attention. Bombay High Court has taken the right decision to send him to the hospital where he wanted to go to. But at the same time, if you want me to say that he is an absolutely innocent old man and just a harmless poet, we'll have that debate at some other point later. I have a different point of view on that. So I want to qualify that in the very beginning. So we are not talking about those cases now. I'm talking about Supreme Court in terms of what is the Supreme Court supposed to do. All right, it is supposed to guard our liberties, and a citizen goes to the Supreme Court should take notice, because Article 32 of the Constitution was designed specially for this purpose. So watch one of the episodes of Know Your Constitution, or KYC, that my young colleague Apurva Mandhani does, explaining what Article 32 is. Article 32, effectively, Dr. Ambedkar called it the soul of the Constitution, and she explains to you why he called it the soul of the Constitution. Because Article 32 gives the Supreme Court the power to enforce, to guarantee my rights and your rights under all the other key articles of the Constitution, because that gives the Supreme Court the writ power. I am simplifying it. You want to understand it in greater detail, please watch that KYC with Apurva. I am giving you a link also. The other provocation that came up, and which is causing this cut the clutter to happen today, is that the Chief Justice said in response to the Siddique Kappan case that we want to discourage too many Article 32 cases coming to Supreme Court of India. That has drawn immediate criticism. Now, judges have a limitation. They can't explain their point of view. Supreme Court of India does not have a PR department which can issue explanatory notes. So you have to read the judge's mind, and that's why judges have to be very careful with what they say, because they then have no control over how somebody interprets it. So it's been interpreted to mean that, look, you have the Supreme Court now which wants to discourage ordinary citizens from seeking its writ jurisdiction, its biggest power, Article 32, the power to guarantee my rights, my fundamental rights, guaranteed by all the other articles. So if Supreme Court is generally winking at everybody and saying, "Arey boss, isme itna aake hame tang nahi karo," so then it has a chilling effect on people in general. Maybe in the course of time, the court and the Chief Justice will explain this, and I hope they do. But this has also led to a lot of criticism. And one of the most critical pieces that you've seen in recent times was Pratap Bhanu Mehta, one of our foremost public intellectuals and a friend of mine, in the Indian Express. And please read that. Once again, I am sharing a link with you. So that article and this entire debate made me think about also the larger role of the Supreme Court and what it's been doing and what it has not been doing, more importantly. So with the help of Apurva Mandhani, I have listed, say, about 10 things that the Supreme Court should have been doing in the last couple of years. These are not very old, but it hasn't quite done. And while the court may not have a mechanism to join this argument and answer these questions, but these are questions that we have to raise now. And all these are cases which challenge the Supreme Court to apply its mind to interpret the key sections of our Constitution, key articles and key interpretation of our Constitution. So one is the electoral bonds case. In my view, the most important of these. Electoral bonds case, we know that in the budget of 2017, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, who it was at that time, he brought in a bunch of amendments in the finance bill, in the budget bill. And these were amendments in a bunch of laws. Amendments in RBI Act, Reserve Bank of India Act, Companies Act, Income Tax Act, Representation of People Act, which governs our voting and elections, and Foreign Contributions Regulations Act, etc., etc. So all these amendments together, they may have looked like stray amendments, but if you put all those together, you saw that these were giving character or certain protections, or I would say certain rights of concealment to the new electoral bonds, which now continue to be anonymous electoral bonds and legal and constitutional, because this had been brought in as part of the budget. Now, this was immediately challenged in the Supreme Court, one on the fundamental ground that could you have brought these amendments as part of the finance bill, because finance bill, as we know, then compulsorily does not need Rajya Sabha's clearance. So even if Rajya Sabha says no, in fact, you can ride roughshod over Rajya Sabha. That was done in the case of the Aadhaar bill also, and we'll come to that. The second reason for the challenge was that this new set of amendments made these electoral bonds completely non-transparent and gave the government of the day exaggerated power. One, of not telling whatever they didn't want to tell, but at the same time having the power of knowing whatever anybody else or their adversaries were getting. So that gave a completely unfair power to the government of the day, because even if the other parties did not disclose who was giving them how much money, the State Bank of India knew it, and that is where these bonds are to be bought, and State Bank of India is a government bank. At the same time, there was no way anybody would know what the ruling party was getting, and as it turned out later, that tens of thousands, in fact scores of thousands of crore rupees have been given out in these anonymous bonds. A majority of that, an overwhelming majority of that, has gone to the ruling party, that is the BJP. So what did the court do? The court, first of all, took 1.5 years even to list this for initial discussion. So it listed this after 1.5 years. So you are already coming to 2019, and now you have a general election coming up, right? So they took 1.5 years to list this. Then Chief Justice of India, Gogoi, started hearing the matter in March 2019. By that time, election campaign had already begun, and code of conduct, etc., were all on their way. So how do you, then you get a good excuse. How do I intervene with this? Elections are just about to start. Governments will change. Money has come in. I can't interfere in the election process. So then they decided in April that they will not give a stay on this case, and they will let these bonds go on as per the amendments made in the budget bill of 2017. But at the same time, why they did not give a stay, and they said that we will take it up after the elections. The elections were ending, as we know, in May. Mid-May was the election. They said that after the elections, all political parties will give the details of the monies they have received, amounts, and the parties or the contributors, and deposit those records with the Election Commission of India. But this is where the doctrine of sealed envelopes came in, that they will give this to Election Commission of India, but in sealed envelopes. Now, it's for the Supreme Court to have then ordered to have those envelopes opened, but they haven't done so. Not only have they not done so, they have not even listed it since then. In June, they said they will list it again after the elections. They did not. Justice Gogoi left in November. Justice Bobde briefly heard this year on 20th of January, again refused to stay it, but gave a notice again to the center and asked for it to be posted for 2 weeks later. It hasn't been heard of since then. February of this year, almost a year has gone. In fact, 9 months have gone since February of this year. Now, ADR, Association of Democratic Rights, which is the petitioner in this case, last month sought urgent listing of this case, and yet nothing happened. Now, don't you have the time for this? Don't you have the inclination for this? Or do you think that this is too complicated, too messy, or this is something I'd rather not lock my horns with? We are not ones to guess anybody's motives, but this is how it is. Then second case, again important, irrespective of my and our, as in the print's editorial views. In my editorial view and the print's editorial view, it's a good thing that Article 370 has gone, because in any case, even the previous governments were slowly diluting it. So what was being done sort of insidiously earlier has now been done frontally and fully. Nevertheless, that's our editorial view, and that is not part of the discussion. Now, Article 370 was challenged through multiple petitions by citizens of India who have the same access to the law and the constitution as you or I or Mr. Modi or Mr. Amit Shah or Mr. Rahul Gandhi or Mr. Vara Vara Rao or Mr. Arnab Goswami. So they filed this bunch of cases. In September of 2019, a 5-member bench of the Supreme Court under Justice N.V. Ramana, they looked at these petitions. In December 2019, they held a hearing where the preliminary point about these petitions were discussed. And what was the point? Whether these petitions could be handled by a 5-judge bench or they deserved a 7-judge constitution bench, because in the past, apparently there had been some contradictory orders on some of these areas. In March 2020, the same bench then decided that, look, there is no need for it to go to a larger bench. This bench is good enough to deal with it. This was March. This is now late November. Until now, nobody has heard anything about these cases. These haven't come up. Again, a big, important constitutional issue. Never mind my or the print's editorial view in it. We don't count. It is the petitioners, the constitution, and India's top constitutional court and its judges, the wisest judges in India. That's what counts. They can reject these if they so wish, but they can't not be hearing these forever. But this is what has happened so far. Number 3, all the petitions against Citizenship Amendment Act. This is more recent. We know all about it. The amendment was passed in 2019. It was notified on January 10, 2020, and then we know there were all these agitations and protests and all that, and you know exactly what does it mean. What it means is that of all the people who come into India from neighboring countries until 31 December 2014, remember, anybody coming in now doesn't get the benefit. December 31, 2014, among them all but Muslims, effectively all but Muslims, followers of all the faiths, will be given Indian citizenship automatically. Muslims will have to apply like anybody has to apply for Indian citizenship. So 2 different dispensations for Muslims and the rest. This was challenged immediately by IUML, Indian Union Muslim League, under Article 32 of the Constitution, seeking the Supreme Court's intervention, challenging its constitutionality. Then more and more petitioners joined in, and soon there were 140 other tag-along petitions, all challenging the constitutionality of these amendments under Articles 14 and 21 of our Constitution. These are the most important articles of our Constitution, and you will read the text of those articles because they basically guarantee our liberties, equality of treatment before the law, etc. Now, once again, this has fallen in the same pattern. List it, issue a notice to the government, wait for government's response, and then sort of forget about it. So, once again, the Supreme Court refused to give any injunction or anything. So, law continues to be operational. At the same time, there is no hearing as yet. Once again, is the court too busy doing other things? And if so, what other things? In fact, the last we heard on this case was 5th of March this year, when Kapil Sibal, appearing for petitioners, sought an urgent listing and discussion. The judges then said, come after the Holi break, you know how long back Holi was, then also COVID happened, etc. But courts have been functioning. But this did not find mention since then. So once again, this has been forgotten. Next, challenge to UAPA, that is the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. We know that in 2019 December, Centre made amendments whereby they gave powers to the government to declare anybody they deemed fit to be a terrorist. This is a description, so and so terrorist. So many people went to the court saying that this is an arbitrary power, this is an unfettered power and unbound discretionary power in the hands of the government. This is violative of Article 14 of the Constitution. The fact is that petition is not been listed as yet, September 2019. Then challenge to RTI amendments. Now, Right to Information Act went through many amendments. Essentially, these amendments were about taking away the fixed tenure of information commissioners, because fixed tenures gave them a certain amount of security, so they could act more impartially and courageously. But that was taken away, and now the power to fix their pay and allowances and benefits was handed over to the executive. So unlike the past, when it was all fixed early on, so you did not have to worry about the government taking anything away, or you did not have to resist the allurement of government being able to give you something extra if you were a good boy or a good girl. That was challenged in January 2020. This year, 11 months back, notices were issued, but nothing has happened on that case also as yet. Next, criminalization of triple talaq. You know, Government of India passed an amendment, a new law called Muslim Women's Protection of Rights and Marriage Act 2019. In August 2019, a notice was issued in response to those who were challenging this on constitutional grounds. But the fact is, it has not been listed since then. Then, something very different, Lieutenant Governor versus Delhi government. Who has administrative power over the services of Delhi? So, a Supreme Court judge ruled on it, but it was a split verdict. Justice Sikri said that Lieutenant Governor has the powers, but Justice Bhushan said that no, it is the elected government that has the powers. Because this was a split verdict, it was handed over to a larger bench. Nothing's happened on that case even now. Number 9 is reservation for economically weaker sections, irrespective of their caste. Now, this was brought in by the Modi government as Constitution 103 Amendment Act on 9th January 2019. On 12th January, it got the President's assent. It was notified exactly the same day. Now, this said that government can now decide who is poor and should be given the benefit of reservation in admissions to public institutions and also in government jobs like scheduled castes and tribes. So caste was no longer the basis for these reservations. Now a bunch of petitions were filed, at last count 20 immediately, saying that this was violative of the basic structure of the Constitution. A 3-judge bench then discussed whether this should be handed over to a larger bench. In August 2020, they decided that this should go to a larger bench, but since then nothing has happened about it, and this is now being implemented. So maybe by the time it comes up, it will be too late and there will be dog's breakfast, because then if somebody sets it aside, then do you set it aside from today or do you do it retrospectively? So once again, the more you delay these things, the more complications you cause for yourselves. Then Aadhaar as money bill. Now Aadhaar was passed as money bill. That is something that a 5-judge bench had cleared earlier. But later a 5-judge bench in November 2019 expressed doubts over it. And because they expressed doubts over it, it was referred to a 7-judge bench. But that bench has not moved forward as yet, because this will also have implications on the passing of the electoral rolls, anonymous electoral rolls amendments as well, because that was also slipped through as a money bill, part of the budget in fact. Now I can talk about all the things that the court instead has been busy doing, and that will take an entire cut the clutter and it will become a rant. So let me just say that the same court has had 70 sittings of its 3-judge bench trying to run Indian cricket, at the end of which Sourav Ganguly is the chief of BCCI and he appears in advertising commercials, no problem, and you know who heads what in BCCI now. So it's complete waste of taxpayer time and complete waste of judicial equity. The same court took up for no reason the Rafale petitions. It had no business to get in, so it did two things there. One, it wasted its own time, and second, it sort of ruled on a deal that it had no competence. I say that with deep respect. It had no competence to speak about or to rule on. And then you know all about national anthem and dance bars and prohibition, etc. So let's not go there. Now, what is it that Pratap Bhanu Mehta said that caught my eye? He used an expression and he said this is becoming like a Weimar judiciary. So what is Weimar? Weimar was the period in Germany before Hitler, generally between First World War and Hitler, essentially the decade of the 20s in the last century. Now, because I struggled to find a definition or a decluttered definition of Weimar judiciary or what Pratap meant, I actually called him, and like a good professor, he told me what it means. So his idea was that this judiciary is beginning to look like Weimar judiciary in the sense that, one, there is total deference to executive powers, and what that leads to is that you start doing the executive's job and you cede your own jobs, judiciary's job, to the executive, whereas the roles should be contrary to this in a good democracy, not a Weimar republic, in a genuine republic today. And second, it also entails a certain kind of anti-minority tinge in the laws. Now, these are very strong statements, and frankly, once again, we don't know the reason why all these cases have been held up, but because they've been held up, there is a question raised about the Supreme Court. So I don't have scholarship like Pratap Bhanu Mehta, and I can't quote from history. I don't have the same reading from history. I learn from common sense, and I will quote for you one of the old familiar jokes, one of the old familiar husband-wife jokes, which I now know is politically incorrect. So I will sanitize it, at least for gender purposes, and say this is a story of two spouses, and somebody asks them, how come you have such a happy married life? You don't never seem to fight. And one spouse says, look, we've decided some departments or some areas I will have the final call, some areas so and so will have the final call, the other spouse. So what are these areas? Okay, my spouse will have the final call on what car to buy, which house to rent, which school to send our children to, where to invest our money, what to have for lunch, dinner, etc., etc. And me, I will decide on should Trump concede his election or not, right? Should Xi Jinping be taught a lesson by the Quad or not? So decisions like that I take, and all the other decisions, chota mota, that the other person takes. So I know that's a joke, but the Supreme Court seems to be following some of that principle as well. And in the process, it does sometimes give the impression of having become the court of trivial pursuits, which is not a healthy thing.